So, if you're like me, you probably have a considerable fear of making mistakes with what you actually do. So, I want to talk about that. I want to talk to you about how I get over this. And I don't necessarily ever feel like I get over it, but I want to talk to you and hopefully make you feel okay that you're making mistakes. I would love for you to be able to do that. So, if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Maslach. I'm an associate professor of innovation, and I actually study learning from failure. And I study it because I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. And I am constantly thinking that I am not good enough. I'm constantly thinking that there are far better people than me. And it's something that I ruminate on a lot. And I think partly it has to do with sort of being programmed to think that there is a right answer, whatever that right answer is. So if you're like me, what I end up doing is looking over something 1,000 times, maybe even more than that. And then I send it off to somebody and there's mistakes in it. There's all sorts of mistakes and there's problems with it when it comes back. And if you're working with some people, they sometimes will send some sort of nasty note or something might happen to you where they do something that is not necessarily positive. And if that happens, the fear of making mistakes gets reinforced. And there's this sort of culture that happens a lot in the research game or within the academic education game that there is this sort of right answer. And it's built into how we actually do things. And how I actually get over this fear of making mistakes and the fear of doing that is just through repetition. And I am never going to lose this. This is deeply ingrained in who I am. I feel like I'm always imperfect. I feel like there is far better people than me. I'm nervous almost all the time, particularly when there's groups of people. I don't like any of those feelings. I feel it right now. I feel all of those emotions. And the only way that I know that works, and there's no real definitive way of ever sort of having something other than medication or something like that. But the only thing that works for me is just through repetition and getting up and doing it again. And then thinking in my head, if somebody is going to say something in response, if it's not going to work out, then it probably wasn't meant to be, and this relationship is not a good relationship to begin with. And I often use how people deal with mistakes and how they, when they see what I've done, I often use it as a signal of, should I actually be around this person? Is this person healthy? Is it a good person to be part of my life? And I've learned over years and years and years and years to trust this instinct whenever that kind of goes off, where somebody has said something that doesn't sort of go right. I use that as a signal. And so what I do, this fear is never going to go away. And sometimes it gets even more aggressive in me whenever I have those sort of responses. And it's a negative response that somebody will send to me. But I just stand up and I square my shoulders. And maybe it's a little meekly in my head, but I say, hey, you know what? This is good enough. I'm just going to put this in and let's see what happens. And almost always, it's not going to work out anyways, but that's okay. And that's where I think I'm okay at this moment. And I just have to stand up and see. A lot of times when I've determined, and a lot of people that have experience with doing just, whatever the field. In my field, it's the academic aim, it's doing research. People that have a lot of experience in that, they kind of don't worry about it that much. They get to the point where they just realize that there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. And it's truly true when you're starting out that you think you can control everything, that you have all sorts of things that are at your fingertips. If you did everything right, and this was my response, how I thought about things. I thought if I did everything right, then it would all work out for me. And frankly, it doesn't work like that. Often, many times, you do everything right and it doesn't work out for you. Many times you might work in the wrong environment. You might work in the wrong group. I even see sometimes between just cohorts, for example, from year to year within classes, that there's differences in classes and how they get along and what they do and the energy that happens. And that's just year to year fluctuations. So I want you to sort of think about that there's a lot of things that are outside of your control. I would say the vast majority of things are outside of your control, and you can't deal with that. And so sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to actually do something, you're going to do everything right, and you're going to get a negative or poor outcome. And when you get that back, you're going to think, it was a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, and you're going to beat yourself up. But I've learned to just say, to heck with it. It wasn't meant to be. I can find an easier way, a better way, a way that makes me feel complete, a way that makes me feel happy if I pursue something else. And the more that I've kind of gone in life, the more I realize that is an important thing. If it doesn't feel like it is going smoothly, if it doesn't feel like, hey, somebody's reinforcing you even though that you're making mistakes and they're saying, that's an amazing thing that you did, then it probably wasn't the right thing that you did in the first place, and you should go and do something else. The best thing that you could do is to find a group of people and find a family, find your group. And if it's just you, that's okay. It's just you. It's just one person. That's your group that you just think, I'm okay. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do this. And yeah, I might make some mistakes, but so be it. It doesn't matter in the end. I guarantee there's not a single person in this world that will ever ask you what your grade was in grade 10 math when you're 50 years old. Somebody does, you'll probably laugh about it. And you'll probably say it was terrible, just like everybody else. So I want you to remember that. You're doing okay. And I think as you take a step back and realize those mistakes are not really mistakes in the first place. They're probably something that somebody else was dealing with, that their own emotional turmoil was coming out, and the response should have been like, hey, this is amazing. Let's keep working on this. I think we can actually adjust this a little bit, but what you did was amazing. And I want you to take that in and realize, as long as you're working, as long as you're actually trying, you're not making mistakes at all. You're doing the right thing.